This equity issue is a big one. India is saying they're at 1.2 tons per person.
Right.
And they're very happy, they've committed in Bali that they're very happy to come in at a level below our per capita emissions, meaning India, as it heads toward being the largest country in the world in 2050, will happily have, let's say, 15 tons per person as their goal. And if that happens, we have a lot of climate change, no matter how conservative you are about sensitivity of the atmosphere to greenhouse gases. So this gets back to this question of technology, new technology, making solar as cheap as paint, not just a little bit cheaper than it is now. And I keep hearing from people in that arena that all this lustrous activity in the venture capital world is only reaching out about 5 years. They're basically taking stuff that's on a high shelf and moving it to a lower shelf to get ready to make a lot of money when it comes to the market. And the government, when you look at government spending on basic research, on the stuff that's basically a public good, that no one can really profit from a better grid. There's aspects of it you might get rich on. That there's this valley of death in funding, and that we have like $1 billion a year in true energy basic research money. There was $5 billion a year in the oil crisis in the 70s. And any talk now about press releases you read about a grand increase in our solar research budget means it's increasing from this incredibly small base. So why isn't there more discussion of the need for a technological revolution, even as we do the efficiency thing and do the fight over cap and trade? It just always seems to get second bill, not even second billing. It's sort of like, oh, by the way, maybe we'll get some revenue from cap and trade money and throw it at research someday. Go.
I don't think it's actually any longer kind of a second-hand type of comment. I think more and more attention is being paid exactly to what you said, that over time, federal research and development money has vastly decreased compared to what we used to spend in the 1970s on energy research. We need to up that tremendously, but we need to do that not just in terms of federal investment, but also in terms of private investment, and look at ways in which that the federal government can help design policies to get through this valley of death that you mentioned. I mean, why, if there are these great technologies that currently exist, why aren't they being deployed at such a greater scale? We need to, I'm sure that there are policy issues. There's not yet a price on carbon, which will help a lot. But then also just making sure that the people who are actually developing the technologies are talking to people in Capitol Hill, are talking to venture capitalists and Wall Street. That conversation isn't yet at a level that it needs to be in order to really get over this valley of death issue. And this is something that we've been paying a lot of attention to at the Center for American Progress and are actively exploring. Absolutely agree. We need to not only be upping the level of federal R&D spending, but also looking at the ways in which that money is currently spent, not just making sure that it's not just stovepiped. You look at all the federal agencies that deal with energy issues, they're not talking to each other about ways in which they can be working together on innovation. We need to, again, this whole White House National Energy Council idea would be a way in which for an appointee to oversee how all the rest of the agencies, bring the rest of the agencies into the White House on a regular basis so they would be talking about ways in which to interact with one another. There also is the discussion of how in the federal government you underfund and underfund ends up leading to a lot of delays, and the cost of developing a new technology in the end is triple, quadruple what it would cost if the same investments had been made using venture capital money. And so there's we need to fundamentally change the way that we're approaching funding low carbon energy research, make it a much larger priority, and we can learn a lot from the private sector in terms of how we should be funding this type of transformation, and we need to make it a really big priority along the lines of, the during World War II revolution that we heard earlier this morning from Lester Brown. So,
Any other quick thoughts? To add to that, I think that Kit's absolutely right. We've got to move the technology forward. And when you go to Congress, which I've done, testifying in front of committees, so much of the conversation is who's going to be hurt by this. The conversation isn't who's going to benefit from this. The people who are actually doing the innovation, who are developing the companies, who are enthusiastic about the opportunities. And I just spent a month in California where I just met scores of people who are so motivated to get answers to this question. But in Congress, in many ways, they're looking at the downside, not the upside. And that's one of the things that we really have to shift. I think the implementation in California of AB 32, there is a lot of work being done on where are the upsides where are the investments in California that are going to make the difference? It can't be limited to California. It's got to be in Ohio, Michigan, Illinois. Every other state in the country has to have a stake in this, and we have to figure out how to unleash those voices and identify them. I think it's a critical part of it. We have a lot of things that we can do now. Efficiency is obviously number one. We have to get going on it. We haven't. That's why we need policies to really unleash that. But for any technological move forward, we really need incentives. We need policies and investment that allow us to do that. And those voices need to be as strong as the voices who are concerned about losing jobs or what the impact in their neighborhood has got to be. The two have to be matched together, and I know tomorrow Majora and Van Jones are going to talk specifically about that. But I think that is a great opportunity over the next year if we can really make that case and have the people working on it be very powerful in making it. I think it'll have a lot of political impact, but it takes a lot of work, and it's something we have to work on.
If I could add, I agree, and if I could add one thing. So let's take a specific example. Let's take the solar thermal example. There's a significant amount of venture money. There's technology that's there already on the cusp. The costs have come down. And we've got some of the best desert in the world in the Mojave and, in California, Nevada, and so on for it. And if you look at, there are agreements being signed now by utilities because of the California regulations. But right now, it's the same kind of thing when mayors sign up to the pledge, right? Well, we hear the next day, they give us a call and say, okay, I've signed this thing, what the hell am I going to do? How am I going to meet this, right? Now, if we look at this solar thermal situation in the Southwest, and here is something a president could do with governors. Okay, Bureau of Land Management owns a significant amount of that land. They don't yet have regs on how they're going to handle this. There's going to have to be some environmental protection, the deserts and the various critters in the desert, and what are we going to do with that? There's going to be at least 4 different agencies just in California, the PUC and the California Energy Commission and so on and so forth, ISO and the people, and then you've got the whole transmission issue, how am I going to connect into the grid, and that's got also. Now, all of those things are doable things, and they're all things that could, in some better way, be coordinated, and they could turn something that is otherwise 6 or 7 or 8 years to bring to fruition to 2 or 3 years to bring to fruition.
Power of the presidency is there.
That difference, if you're a venture capitalist or if you're a banker thinking, am I going to fund this project? The difference between 2 years and 4 years of when the project actually starts generating revenue is life and death, right? And that lack of predictability right now is what's freezing a lot of the projects. So people are signing agreements to say, I'll purchase your power if you can build it. But so that's where I become optimistic also. In Australia, where I was a couple of weeks ago, you had a new government. You have a friendly situation where the federal government and the state governments are all the same party now, and they were elected on this issue. And we're helping them work through some of these issues now about how to accelerate all of these permittings and coordinates and so on. That's what we need to do here as well, and that a president could do without the Congress.